You probably think downsizing means making thousands of difficult decisions, and that's why it feels so overwhelming. But most people are surprised to find out that downsizing is actually much simpler than it looks. The problem is that we tend to treat every downsizing decision like it's the hardest one, when in reality, about 90% of those decisions are pretty straightforward. It's that last 10%, the sentimental items and the emotionally heavy things, that tend to slow us down. So in this video, I'm going to share 6 downsizing rules that will help you move through the process much faster, with less stress and more peace. If we're meeting for the first time, my name is Sheila, and I've moved 10 times in 10 years. I've helped hundreds of other people declutter, downsize, pack, and prepare for a move. So let's get started with the 6 rules. Rule number 1 is that about 90% of your downsizing decisions will actually be pretty simple. When people imagine downsizing, sometimes they picture themselves agonizing over every single item in their home, and of course that feels overwhelming. It can keep you from even wanting to get started at all. But the truth is that about 90% of your stuff is pretty straightforward. Things like stacks of old paperwork and clothes that don't fit, things that are broken, duplicates of things, or stuff that you never really liked in the first place. All of those things are pretty easy answers when it comes to downsizing. But because there is so much stuff, it can feel overwhelming to begin. And that's why I always say start with the easiest things first. Start with the things that are the least sentimental. For most people, that's going to be your bathroom or your kitchen. Do not start with scrapbooks, photo albums, yearbooks, or anything like that, because that is way too heavy and sentimental. Save those for the very end. By the time you get to them, you will have built some momentum and you will have seen progress so that you don't get so bogged down in the memories. When I was first downsizing, I started in the kitchen and I went through duplicate utensils and extra kitchen items, and it gave me the momentum to keep going because those decisions went really fast. And I realized in the process that most of those decisions were pretty easy. And most of your decisions will be like that too. So I'm curious, what's one thing in your home that you already know is part of that easy 90%? Sometimes just naming it is enough to get the momentum started. Rule number 2 is that about 90% of your decisions don't have to be perfect. Another thing that slows people down when they're downsizing is the idea that every single decision has to be exact, that it has to be the right decision. But the truth is that most things in our homes are simply not that high stakes. There usually isn't one perfect answer. You can keep it, give it away, sell it, throw it away. It doesn't matter. The important thing is that with each item you touch, you are moving forward. So remember, you're not deciding the fate of a family heirloom every time you pick something up, because sometimes it's just an old mixing bowl or a stack of magazines or a sweater that you haven't worn in years. And those decisions don't need a long debate. If something is no longer serving a purpose in your life, it's okay to make a simple decision to let it go. Because when you try to make everything exactly perfect, you end up making no progress at all. I remember one woman who was downsizing, and she had a box of household decorations that had hung on the wall in her home for years. She knew that she didn't want them, and they weren't going to fit in her new place, but she still felt stuck about letting them go. She told me she was afraid that her kids might be upset if she got rid of them. Maybe they would want them for their home someday. So she called her kids, and guess what? They didn't want the decorations. They told her to go ahead and donate them. She donated them to a nonprofit that she loved, and she felt a huge sense of relief. So just remember, there are no perfect decisions here. Whatever you decide is the right decision for you. Rule number 3 is that about 90% of the time that you spend downsizing should be spent on decluttering. When you are downsizing, the most important thing to do is to reduce the amount of stuff in your home, and you do that by decluttering. But a lot of people lose momentum by doing things that feel productive but don't actually move the process forward. Things like driving donations all over town, or listing every item online to sell, or reorganizing shelves before you're done decluttering. Those things can easily eat up hours. I see this all the time. Someone starts decluttering, then they stop to research where to donate something, then they stop again to list something online, and then they start reorganizing a closet, and then suddenly 2 hours have passed and they've only let go of a handful of things. That's why it's important to separate the tasks. Remember that decluttering, cleaning, and organizing are 3 different activities. When you are downsizing, the most important thing to do is to declutter. And decluttering simply means deciding what you're keeping and what you're letting go of, and that is it. Organizing and cleaning can wait until later. Most of your downsizing time should be spent decluttering. Rule number 4 is that about 90% of your progress comes from small, simple actions. A lot of times people think that downsizing requires huge blocks of time, but most progress actually comes from small actions repeated consistently, like letting go of 3 things from a drawer, or clearing 1 shelf, or putting 5 items into a donation box. Those steps might not feel very dramatic, but they add up. And they build momentum, and over time, that momentum creates a home that feels lighter and easier to live in. So never underestimate what you can do in just a few minutes. And if you need some inspiration, I have a playlist of 1-minute decluttering videos. I will link it in the description. And yes, you can absolutely make progress decluttering your home 1 minute at a time. Rule number 5 is that about 90% of your self-talk should be kind. Now, this might sound funny because you might think, well, I'm not talking to myself, but actually we all do. We all have thoughts running through our minds all day long, and when you're downsizing, a lot of emotions can come up because the hardest part isn't usually the stuff. It's usually the emotions and the stories that we tell ourselves about the stuff. So you might catch yourself thinking, why am I not more organized? I can't believe I let it get this bad. I'm so ashamed of the way my house looks. I'm never going to get it together. But that kind of self-talk doesn't help you move forward. It just makes the process heavier. So try speaking to yourself the way that you would speak to a good friend. With patience, with kindness, with understanding and love. You made the best decisions that you could with the information that you had at the time. Now you're in a different place, and it's okay to let go of the things that no longer serve you. But do it with self-love and compassion and grace, because that is what you deserve. You can love yourself in the process of letting go. If you've gotten any value from this video so far, it would mean the world to me if you would hit that subscribe button so that I can reach more people and help more people. Thank you so much. Let's keep going. Rule number 6 is that being 90% on board is good enough. Let me explain. Have you ever said something like, a part of me feels this way, but another part of me feels different? Maybe part of you feels excited to downsize and another part feels sad. Sometimes we think that we have to be 100% on board with something, or we have to feel 100% ready before we move forward. But life transitions rarely work that way. Downsizing often represents a positive change. For some people, it means you're moving to a smaller home or to an area you've always wanted to live, or maybe you're moving closer to family, or simplifying your lifestyle, or starting a new chapter. And it's completely normal to feel excited about that, but it's also normal for a part of you to struggle letting things go, especially if you're downsizing after a loss, after a divorce, a death in the family, a diagnosis, or a big life change that you didn't see coming. Even under the best of circumstances, mixed emotions are completely normal. You might feel nostalgic, or you might feel unsure, or a little bit sad. And that doesn't mean that you're making the wrong decision. It just means that you're human, and humans have complex emotions. So remember, being 90% on board is enough. Downsizing isn't always easy, but when you realize that most of the process is the simple 90%, everything else becomes more manageable. Instead of feeling buried under thousands of decisions, you can focus on just one step at a time, and those small steps add up faster than you might think. And if you're wondering where to start downsizing, in this video right here, I'll walk you through the first steps so you can get started without getting overwhelmed. I'll meet you there.